Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 94. This venerable one sees the heavenly rift again. Nangongsi looked displeased. His eyes were burning like boiling molten iron. His gaze swept past and paused for a moment on Moran's fiery red godly weapon. Then, he looked away. Who is this? Yewangzi answered, he is a young master from Shisheng Peak. His surname is Mo. Mo. Nangongsi frowned. The one that was just picked up a few years ago. Yes. Nangongsi glanced at Yewangzi. Do you know him? At Peach Blossom Spring, we used to live in the same courtyard. Nangongsi sneered. No one knew what he meant by it, but Yewangzi saw his reaction. His handsome face paled a little. His eyelashes drooped, and then he pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Since he wants to wait, then let's give him some face. Nangongsi said, he is the master of a godly weapon at such a young age. I want to see what he is capable of. Moran didn't have time to pay attention to the Rufeng sect. He turned around and his clothes fluttered in the wind. The barrier was broken. There was not much time left. Chu Wanning, are you not done yet? Whoosh. Luo Xiangxian's claws broke the gauze curtain. The white silk fluttered and the plain satin was shaken into thousands of snowflakes. Chu Wanning felt a very familiar aura approaching. He suddenly reacted and opened his eyes wide. Tianwen. No. It was not Tianwen. When he fought with her, she had a spiritual power that was very similar to Tianwen. The array in the Chen family residence was like a thin fog. It locked a living soul and a malicious spirit. After exchanging more than 10 moves, the mystery in Chu Wanning's mind gradually dissipated. A sudden thought came to him and he was instantly enlightened. He understood now, Zaixin Lu. Luo Xianxian had died long ago. She had been cremated. At that time, she could only use Madame Chen's body. There was no reason for her to turn back to her original appearance now. That mysterious person took a section of the Zaixin Liu's withered vine and built a temporary body for Luo Xianxian to put her soul into. The cooked human hearts outside were steaming with smoke of different colors representing the different essences. Metal, water, fire, and earth were all waiting for Luo Xianxian, the wood element being a vine of Zaixin Liu. What was that person trying to do? Did he do all this for Luo Xianxian so she could regain her physical body in order for her go to the netherworld and get together with Chen Bohuan? Who would do this for her? Her family was long dead. Family, family. Chu Wanning's heart stirred, and his blood surged. He suddenly remembered what Luo Xianxian had said to him when he first met her. She had an older brother who went missing many years ago. Was it him? Those who intend to block my way shall not live. Luo Xianxian had a physical body, while Chu Wanning was a living soul. Although her spiritual power was not as strong as his, it was hard to tell who was better at the moment. In the blink of an eye, her bright red claws pierced aiming towards his heart. Fearing that his soul would be damaged, Chu Wanning suddenly dodged and backhanded her forehead. It's useless, it's the same no matter how many times you try. The purification spell can't hurt me. She sneered and roared to the sky, summoning the living dead in Kaidi town from all directions. All you wandering ghosts, listen to me. Gather here, drink blood and slaughter everyone. A terrifying howl suddenly rang out. Kaidi town was in a state of chaos. The corpses whose hearts were dug out were randomly rampaging around. The had heed her call and rushed towards the Chen residence. The living death were like a tide, rising and falling one after another, and their roars were like waves, quenching in the wind. The roar that made people feel cold was like a battle cry on the battlefield, spreading over hundreds of miles in an instant, and everyone could hear it clearly whether they were inside or outside the barrier. Outside the barrier, all the cultivators were terrified. Inside the barrier, Chu Wanning was fighting alone. He was alone and just a living soul. He stood in front of Luo Xianxian in his white robe. She was laughing heartily, her eyes were full of madness and fierceness. He however stood as gentle as a bamboo tree, his face placid despite hearing the clamor of hundreds of ghosts, but his eyebrows were furrowed and his eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of haze. Luo Xianxian, do you still remember some of the words you once said to me? Huh? She seemed to not expect him to ask this and couldn't help but be stunned. While she was in a daze, Chu Wanning had already rushed to the top of the Chen residence's courtyard with his white robe fluttering and a pair of spotless silk shoes landed on the edge of the sandalwood tiles. You once said that you never wanted to be a malevolent ghost, and you also said that you never wanted to harm people. His voice lingered and the wind blew in all directions. Chu Wanning looked up, and the black mass of living dead rushed over from all directions. He frowned slightly and suddenly flicked his sleeves, and the cold wind blew the living soul's clothes. A cage of golden light suddenly lit up between his hands. Excuse me. Suddenly, thousands of willow vines rose from the ground. The ground of Kaidi town, which was full of blood and corpses, instantly cracked with thousands of holes, and thick willow trees broke out of the ground one after another. They were all overflowing with dazzling golden light, and like thousands of chains, they strangled the running corpse one by one. Chu Wanning closed his eyes, and his long hair fluttered in front of his cold face. He said in a low voice, "Tianwen, 10,000 coffins." He suddenly looked up, and his eyes were like flames and lightning. The rows of golden willow trees suddenly shone brightly, and countless dense branches and leaves grew out, trapping the corpses that were still roaring and struggling. Then, a crack appeared on every willow tree, and as the crack opened, the trees wrapped the corpses and sealed them. 10,000 coffins. The largest willow tree was uprooted from the center of the Chen residence, and like a sharp arrow, it chased after Luo Xianxian, who was constantly dodging. However, Luo Xianxian's body was made of from Zaixin Lu. Zaixin Lu, Tianwen, and Jiangui were all from the same willow tree that Gushan the Exalted had brought from the heavenly realm to the mortal world. For a moment, the 10,000 coffins formed by Tianwen couldn't catch up with Luo Xianxian's petite and agile figure. Her bright red robe embroidered with golden phoenixes billowed in the wind like waves, and the giant willow tree grew taller and taller, piercing through the bounded domain and straight into the sky. The people outside the bounded domain were stunned by the willow tree. Some of the people with weak spiritual power couldn't withstand it, and their knees went soft under the pressure of the powerful Grand Master's aura, and they fell to the ground with a thud. As the willow tree formed by the spirit of Tianwen grew taller and taller, Chu Wanning's spiritual power had been released to an unprecedented level. Some of the cultivators around the Kaidi town were bleeding from their eyes, and even Nangongxi had difficulty breathing. His chest was tight and his heart was flustered. Nangongxi gritted his teeth. "There's such a person at Shi Sheng Peak. Is that Elder Yu Heng?" Li Wuxin calmed himself down. After all, he was a sect leader, so he could still withstand the spiritual pressure. He said, "Young Master Nangong, this person is Chu Wanning." "What?" Under such strong pressure, Nangongxi was suddenly shocked and spat out a mouthful of blood. "It's Grand Master Chu." "Young Master, don't talk anymore." Seeing that he was injured, Ye Wangzi raised his hand and pressed two of Nangongxi's acupoints, and then transferred some spiritual power to him. Unexpectedly, Nangongxi didn't appreciate his kindness and suddenly broke free. He fiercely wiped the blood on his lips and said, "Don't touch me." "Young Master Ye, let me do it." Song Kaiutong was a butterfly-boned beauty seed, so she wasn't affected much. She stepped forward and looked at Ye Wangzi with a pair of delicate and timid eyes, and recommended herself in a low voice. Ye Wangzi wasn't as friendly as he was when they first met, and he didn't even pay attention to her. Song Kaiutong was rebuffed by him, so she turned her head and looked at Nangongxi with watery eyes. Nangongxi's attitude towards her was much better than before, but he still said, "I don't need your help. I'm just surprised because I haven't seen an old friend for many years. I'm not that weak. If you have time, go take care of others." On the other side, Mo Ran didn't notice the matter between Song Kaiyutong and the Rufeng sect. He had already returned to the side of Chu Wanning's body. He looked up and saw that Chu Wanning's soul and Luo Xianxian were fighting fiercely. Then he looked at the corpses that were temporarily sealed by thousands of willow vines and he couldn't help but be frightened. It should be known that this kind of spell, even under normal circumstances, would consume a lot of spiritual power to use. Not to mention that Chu Wanning's soul was still in the out-of-body state. How unfathomable was this person's strength? Before he finished thinking, he suddenly heard a loud scream. The withered vines of the Zaixinlu were no match for Tianwen. Luo Xianxian was bound by the willow vines under the lonely moon and the lush branches and leaves soon swallowed her until she couldn't be seen. The towering tree wrapped her into a crack in the tree hole and then the towering willow slowly lowered and finally reached the same height as the ordinary ancient trees. At this time, the barrier was completely broken, but Tianwen's 10,000 coffins was still sealing the corpses so there was no danger for the time being. Xue Zhenyang didn't dare to relax though and ordered the rest of the Shisheng Peak's disciples to guard in front of each willow vine, just in case. The others followed the crowd and went straight to the courtyard of the Chen residence. Mo Ran didn't think too much because of the urgency of the situation. He carried Chu Wanning's cold body horizontally and also went over there. When the crowd arrived, the ancient willow tree that sealed Luo Xianxian had become a real coffin. She was lying in it, and her face was sometimes ferocious and sometimes sad. Her eyes were sometimes fierce and sometimes sad. Her mouth kept changing between two kinds of voices, one was crazy and kept shouting, "Why did you stop me? Why did you stop me? All of you should die. All of you should die." The other was weak and helpless, "Lord Yama, is it you who came? Please, save me. I don't want to hurt anyone, please." The two kinds of voices alternated back and forth, and after a long while, the coffin became dead silent. At this time, the spiritual power of Chu Wanning's living soul was reaching its limit, and he couldn't hold on any longer. But he still relied on his mind and finally touched the forehead of the woman in the coffin. "Who are you?" The female ghost's closed eyes slowly opened and they were still scarlet-colored. Li Wuxin shouted, "Not good." He was about to rush forward to attack but Chu Wanning struck the air and a bolt of lightning fell, blocking his way. "Chu Wanning, you!" Chu Wanning ignored him and stared at the delicate girl who was slowly sitting up in the coffin. She opened her blood-red eyes, but there was no murderous intent in them. Instead, she was confused and flustered, and she whispered, "I am Luo Xianxian." When Chu Wanning heard her answer, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. His clothes, his eyes and his soul dissipated. After a while, the man in Mo Ran's arms moved slightly. Mo Ran quickly put him down, and let him lean against the pillar. He knelt on one knee, and said, "Shizun, you're back." Chu Wanning's phoenix eyes lost focus for a moment, and after a while, he slowly regained focus. He glanced at Mo Ran. He had used up a lot of spiritual power and his spirit core was fragile, so he looked a little weak. His face wasn't much better than when his soul left his body. He was still as pale as before. "Yes." Chu Wanning responded, and leaned against the pillar for a while more, then slowly got up. He walked slowly in front of Luo Xianxian and lowered his eyes to look at her. Luo Xianxian opened her mouth slightly and looked at him blankly. "Lord Yama, why am I here? What happened? Let's leave that for now." Although Chu Wanning was a little weak, his eyes were bright and sharp. He went straight to the point and asked, "Tell me, who made this body for you? This is a very important matter. Do you still remember?" Chu Wanning waited, and his fingernails almost broke on the pillar because of nervousness. "I'm not very sure, I only have some vague impression." Luo Xianxian murmured, "It's a man, he. Shuemeng was also anxious, "Think again." Luo Xianxian tried hard to recall, I was in a daze at that time and I didn't see his face clearly, but I heard his voice, and it sounded like a northern accent. I think. Ah! She suddenly exclaimed, and her face was full of fear. I remember now. It's him. It's him. Oranges. The one who stole the oranges. What orange? Stealing oranges, what nonsense. Xuemen muttered. But Chu Wanning immediately understood she was talking about the deranged man she met when she was young, who cut down the orange tree. There was a man in Linyi who killed 20 people. Who was it? Linyi? Could it be the Rufeng sect? It was, but at this time, a sudden clap of thunder sounded in the sky, and the Zhenlong chess formation above Kaidi town suddenly glowed red. Xue Zhenyang shouted, "Not good." He immediately shouted, "Watch the 10,000 coffin closely. I'm afraid the person who set up the chessboard has found out and is about to make a move." Kaidi town was instantly filled with sand and stones, smoke and dust flew everywhere. The cultivators were ready, with their backs against each other and their swords in front of their chests. Chu Wanning's eyes darkened and he said to Luo Xianxian, "Get up. That person left a white chess piece in your body, so don't be controlled by him anymore. I'll expel it for you. Once the white chess piece falls, you'll leave immediately and reincarnate in the underworld. Don't stay in the mortal world for long." As he said this, light gathered in his palm and he hit Luo Xiangxian's chest. However, he didn't feel the power of the white chess piece of the Zhenlong chess formation. Chu Wanning shuddered as a chill ran down his spine. In that split second, he sensed danger almost instinctively. He yelled at Luo Xianxian, "Let's go." It was too late. Ah! There was only a sharp scream. In the center of the Zhenlong chess formation in the sky, a bloody light shot down and hit Luo Xiangxian's body made of willow vines. Boom! The fire covered the sky. Luo Xianxian. The girl's figure quickly became distorted in the sea of fire and a wisp of fragrant soul rose to the sky and mixed with the scorched smoke. The soul and the smoke trembled as the smoke and the soul merged. Where Luo Xianxian was standing, a green light array suddenly rose to the sky, the essence of wood spirit. In an instant, Chu Wanning's face turned pale and his eyes were extremely fierce. He was wrong. Luo Xianxian must have been a person with a high level of wood spiritual essence when she was alive. The manipulator of this scheme didn't use metal, fire, water, and earth to nourish the Zaixin Lu vine with wood attributes. Instead, he was waiting for the resentment to gather into thunder and hit Luo Xianxian, so that her resentment would become the source of the temporary life of the Zaixin Liu's vine. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, all 5 spiritual essences. Whatever he wanted to do, he could do it now. Chu Wanning looked up at the sky as everyone did. The leaves were bleak, and for a moment, it was terrifyingly quiet. Then, all of a sudden, the earth trembled. It was almost the same as that time in the ancient city of Linan that Mo Ran and the Chu Wanning saw in the illusion at Peach Blossom Spring. Above Kaidi town, a huge purple-black crack was torn open and it seemed to be wrapped in countless bloody storms, diseases and pain. It slowly opened like a demon's eye. Li Wuxin pointed at the crack and shouted in a trembling voice, "The boundary of the ghost realm is broken. The sky above Kaidi town has cracked and the gate of the ghost realm is open." End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 95. This venerable one's calamity from his past life. The barrier between the mortal realms and the ghost realms were not as stable as it was in ancient times. Small holes were common and would not cause the cultivators to panic. However, at this time, a bloody eye pierced through the sky. In an instant, the sky changed color and sand and stones flew everywhere. It was the once-in-a-century heavenly rift. Everyone present, except for Mo Ran, had never personally experienced such a calamity before. Therefore, whether it was the white-haired Li Wuxin, the battle-hardened Xue Zhenyang, the cultivators of Rufeng sect of the upper cultivation world nor of Shisheng peak of lower cultivation world, the thousands of people present were all at a loss and did not know what to do. Mo Ran was even more shocked. A strong smell of blood seemed to come from his previous life. He grinded his teeth and tasted blood, people dying like flies. It was this heavenly rift. In his previous life, Shi Mei had died in this heavenly rift. At that time, he and Chu Wanning had worked together to repair the barrier. However, due to lack of spiritual power, he was repelled by the thousands of ghosts that swarmed out and fell from the sky, but that shouldn't have happened until 3 years later. Mo Ran remembered that snowy night so clearly. New Year's Eve had just passed. The air was still filled with the faint smell of firecrackers and there were still fragments of fireworks on the snow. The night before, he stayed up with everyone and drank Tasu wine. Mo Ran was slightly drunk and looked up. Under the warm candlelight, Shi Mei's eyes seemed to be filled with spring water. No matter which angle one looked at it, they were full of affection. Shi Sheng Peak was very lively with everyone toasting each other and laughing. At that time, he thought that this was really good. Even if he didn't get to be together with the person he liked, he could just watch and accompany him from afar for the rest of his life. After the banquet ended, the disciples returned home together. He and Shi Mei went back together from the Menpo Hall. The ground was covered with frost and snow, and the moonlight flowed from above. He saw that Shi Mei was a little cold, so he took off his outer robe and put it on his shoulders without saying anything. Because he was a little drunk, he carefully looked at him a few more times. The beauty beside him was like new snow, so bright and pretty. Aran. Yes. You drank a little too much today. Ha ha ha, is that so? Mo Ran laughed, but after a while, he suddenly couldn't laugh anymore. Shi Mei's slightly cold hands gently cupped his face, causing his burning cheeks to become even hotter. Mo Ran's eyes widened, and at that moment, he trembled slightly. Shi Mei smiled and said to him, "Oh yes. Look at you. Your face is red after drinking 3 cups of hot wine." "Yes, it's hot." Mo Ran clumsily scratched his head, but his face burned even more. At that time, he was so satisfied. If he liked someone, he didn't have to be intimate with them. He didn't dare to think too much. That person had only touched his face, and he felt that he was already being treated kindly by the heavens. He was so overwhelmed that he couldn't say anything else and could only stare blankly. His dark and warm eyes were filled with surprise and gratitude. The two of them said their goodbyes in front of their room. When Shi Mei put on his coat and left, he turned his face to the side and smiled at him. Aran. He was about to leave, but when he heard him called, he hurriedly turned around like a spinning top, afraid that he would miss something. "Yes, I'm here. Thank you for the coat." "It's nothing. I feel hot anyway." "There's more." Shi Mei's gaze became more and more gentle, and it was so warm that it could make a long winter pass. "Aran, actually I..." Bang! There was a firework explosion in the distance. Mo Ran didn't hear what he said, or maybe Shi Mei didn't continue at that time. When the surroundings quieted down, Shi Mei had already pushed open the door to his room. Mo Ran was anxious, and hurriedly called out to him, "Wait, what did you just say?" It was rare for the other man to tease him, and he winked. "I only say good things once." Shi Mei. But that seductive person still didn't fulfill Mo Ran's wish and look back at him. Only half of her beautiful face was exposed under the warm curtain. There was also a faint smile that Mo Ran would never forget for the rest of his life. "It's late, I'm going to sleep. When I wake tomorrow and feel like I want to talk to you." He paused, and his soft eyelashes drooped like mimosas. "I'll tell you again." Unexpectedly, the sky cracked and the dawn followed. In the end, Mo Ran didn't hear Shi Mei's words, and the softest old dream of his life was dyed scarlet. Many times in the middle of the night, he still remembered Shi Mei's smiling face showing behind half of the warm curtain, so handsome, so gentle. He didn't know if it was just his wishful thinking, but he even felt that his expression was infinitely affectionate. For the rest of his life, he continued to dream that old dream, over and over again, bringing pain in his chest. In the dream, Shimei told him that he liked him and he would woke up with a smile. He was so happy that he even forgot that Shimei was dead, and the past was temporarily forgotten. He smiled so happily, thinking about what to cook for his beloved in the future. Such an important matter was worth worrying about after all. But always, as he smiled, tears rolled down his face. He buried his face in his palms. That year on the snowy night of New Year's Eve, the words scattered in the wind, and he didn't know any more. Thousands of miles of clouds broke, and the ghost realm opened. Countless evil ghosts and evil spirits rushed out from the barrier opening, like thousands of soldiers and horses rushing to attack the city. The screams around Moran suddenly woke him up from his memories. As if he had gone mad, he shouted anxiously in the chaotic, disorganized crowd and looked for him in panic. Shimei. Shi-Mei. Shi-Ming-Jing. Where are you? Where are you? I don't know why the heavenly rift 3 years later suddenly came early. I don't know if I can protect you now. But I can't watch you get hurt again, I can't watch you die again. I beg you to live. It's my fault, I wasn't strong enough to protect you then, I was too stupid, I didn't think of everything. Where are you? Aran. In the midst of the clashing of weapons, there was a vague voice, faintly heard. Shimei. He saw him. Beside Shuemeng, he was using a water spirit as a shield, blocking the evil ghosts and dead souls that were pouncing over. Moran almost didn't care and ran towards him, his voice choked, his eyes red. You dog, come and help me. Shuemeng was 1 against 10, but the waves of living dead were like endless flowing water. His forehead gradually seeped with sweat, his teeth clenched. Come quickly. Without waiting for him to speak more, Moran leapt up as a red light flashed. Jiangui answered the call. His hand rose and the vines fell, the row of ghosts in front of him were scattered by the godly weapon, instantly turning them into fine powder. Moran turned his head and shouted at Shimei, don't go too far, get behind me. I want to help Shizun. When Moran heard this, he got frightened. Don't go. He definitely can't let Shimei get close to Chu Wanning in this chaotic battle. The scenes from his previous life kept overlapping with the scene in front of him back then, it was the same sentence. I want to help Shizun. Good, go quickly. You will be safer with Shizun, let him protect you. How ridiculous. Let him protect you. Chu Wanning, Moran calculated everything, but forgot that the person was Chu Wanning. Heartless, cold-blooded to the extreme. His heart and mind were filled with caring for the sake of the common people of the world, but he didn't care when his own disciple died. Don't go to him. He can handle it himself. The overlapping of the two lives made his scalp numb. Moran's eyes were red, he angrily shouted at Shimei, don't go anywhere, stay here. But Shizun just used so much of his spiritual power. He won't die. Take care of yourself. As he said this, his eyebrows furrowed, and he fiercely whipped the living dead that were rolling towards him. In an instant, blood and flesh flew everywhere, brain matter splattered all around. Although his spiritual energy was far inferior to that of his previous life, his every move was skillful. This battle-hardened psyche had once fought with experts like Ye Wangzi and Chu Wanning. Even if there were millions of ferocious corpses, he was still fearless. The crack in the sky grew bigger and bigger. The ghosts that had been floating in the ghost realm for hundreds of years poured into the human world like a storm, mixed in with the corpses in Kaidi town that had broken free from the willow vines. The scene was getting frenzy and more terrifying. It was like pouring water into a pot of boiling oil. It was very chaotic. It was also like locusts pouncing on a field of grain, evil spirits grabbing living people and gnawing at them. The people of Shisheng Peak were able to handle it because they had experience fighting this kind of battle on a small scale when there's a rift in the barrier at Ghost Zone. However, the Rufeng sect and the Baitan Manor were almost completely wiped out. Many cultivators cried out miserably, blood spurting several feet high. Chu Wanning was far away, Mo Ran couldn't see his situation for the time being. However, he inadvertently saw Ye Wangzi and Nangongsi in the rolling sea of people. Although the two didn't get along well, their fighting moves were shockingly similar. He saw Ye Wangzi abandon his long sword, his hand glowing with a blue light as he summoned a longbow. Nangongsi also drew a crescent moon. The two glanced at each other, passed each other and rushed to the sides, aiming at the densest part of the horde. They knocked an arrow, knocked the bow and pulled the string. Whoosh! The two released their arrows almost at the same time, white feathers splitting the air, and the sound was like the cry of a wild goose. The arrows were quenched and wind blades were scattered everywhere. Wherever they passed, evil spirits were torn apart and strangled. Nangongsi revealed a proud expression and reached for the quiver on his back to draw another arrow. However, he didn't expect not to find anything. That's it? Here. Before he could get angry, Ye Wangzi threw a bunch of white feathered arrows to him. You didn't want to bring more. Humph. Nangongsi snorted, but the situation was critical and he didn't have the mood to put on airs with Ye Wangzi. He caught the arrows, and the two sank back into their respective battles. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Although many evil spirits were repelled, there were even more coming from the ghost realm. Li Wuxin killed more than 10 evil spirits with a single slash of his sword, then turned to Xue Zhenyang and shouted, "We can't continue like this, we can't hold on. Get someone to fix the barrier." Xue Zhenyang glanced at the distance of Kaidi town. There were 4 golden light arrays in 4 directions. He gasped for breath and said angrily, "Easy for you to say. Can you fix this barrier? Do you have anyone here who knows how to fix it?" Li Wuxin said with a dark expression, "Barrier techniques aren't my sex expertise." "Then shut the fuck up. How many Yuhangs do you think we have? Chu Wanning is guarding the 4 sides barrier. Otherwise, these evil spirits will rush out of the encirclement and quickly kill their way through the entire Sichuan region. If the cultivators can't hold on, then won't the common people be done for? It's better for Sichuan to be destroyed than for the whole cultivation world to be in chaos. If you don't get someone to fix the heavenly rift, I'm afraid this matter will be difficult to resolve." Xue Zhenyang was furious. He swung his iron fan, and when the wind slashed at the evil spirits, it also seemed to inadvertently graze Li Wuxin's cheek. "Do you think the upper cultivation world is so precious that the lower cultivation world is born to die for you? Don't talk nonsense. I'm talking about sacrificing the pawn to protect the rook. If this heavenly rift happened in my Baitan manor, I would also sacrifice my entire sect to protect the peace of the world." "How arrogant. Manor Masterly, it's easy for you to say that." Xue Zhenjiang's eyes widened. He was so angry that he laughed. "The entrance to the ghost realm is in Sichuan. It won't move to your Baitan manor for thousands of generations. It seems that Shisheng Peak would be destroyed thousands of times to protect the peace of the world. Manor Masterly, you really know how to talk." The two of them were fighting and arguing at the same time. Suddenly, they saw a snow-colored light sweeping over from the western sky. Before they could see clearly whether it was a friend or a foe, they heard the fine and compact sound of a gukin coming from the clouds. The sound was like a storm falling from the sky, but also like thousands of arrows piercing through the forest. They didn't see any weapons, but they felt that the shadows of swords and knives were everywhere. The cries of armored horses filled the city. Kunlun Taxu Palace. Xue Zhenyang suddenly raised his head and looked at the rolling snow-colored light. When it got closer, he saw that it was a group of cultivators riding on swords. They were wearing snow-colored silk clothes and had peach blossom petals floating around them. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they all looked very gentle and beautiful. Because of their mental cultivation method, they all looked like they were in their early 20s. The people of the Taxu Palace were either standing or sitting. Half of them were holding a pipa in their arms, and the other half were holding a gukin in front of their knees. The loud and clear music flowed down from the sky, making the evil spirits and living dead all over the ground cry out in pain. However, it was as if they were trapped in an inescapable net and couldn't escape. The man on the lead has light blonde hair, jade eyes, and deep facial features. He wore snow-colored silk clothes with a droplet of water on his forehead. His slender neck stuck out from the collar, like a flower in a porcelain vase. It was cold in the Kunlun Taxu Palace, so he wore a fox fur coat on top of his plain clothes, which made him look even more calm and graceful. This person also held an exquisite pipa in his arms. He frowned and twisted the strings with his long and slender fingers. Countless bright peach blossoms danced around him with the sound of his music. The four seas are swayed by the winds, 1,000 years of virtue is clear, and military clothes are not worn. Today is a high achievement. The sound of the gukin slowed down slightly. He lowered his eyes and saw Xue Zhenyang and the others. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly heard a person in the distance angrily shout, "Mei Hangxiu! Why is it you, dog?" The person who shouted was Xue Meng. As he shouted angrily, he rushed under Mei Hangxiu's sword. He raised his head and scolded, "Why did the Kunlun Taxu Palace send such an unreliable thing like you to help?" Ye Wangzi heard the sound and turned around. When he saw the man playing the gukin, he was also angry. Him. Nangongsi, what? You know this one too? I don't know him. Ye Wangzi was not happy to see Mei Hangxiu, but Xue Meng rushed up to scold him. He turned around and left, only leaving behind a sentence, "It's just a fight." Nangongsi was interested. "Oh, how is his skill?" "Het." Ye Wangzi sneered. "He relies on women to fight. What do you think of that?" Nangongsi. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 96. This venerable one's hatred born in this life. It was no wonder that Ye Wangzi looked down on him. This Mei Hangxiu was precisely the Dashikshan that had attracted countless female cultivators to fight over him at Peach Blossom's spring. He originally thought that the one who came was powerful, but who would have thought that it was a pretty boy who relied on his appearance to make a living. Nangongsi immediately lost interest and turned around to kill the enemy. Mei Hangxiu glanced at Xue Meng. His eyes revealed some helplessness, but he did not pay attention to him. Instead, he lowered his eyebrows and casually plucked the gukin string several times. The 100 cultivators of the Taxu Palace heard the gukin music and scattered in all directions. Gukin division, play the Twinkling Brilliance song. Pipa division, perform the array-breaking dance. Following his orders, those who were playing the gukin and strings instantly changed the movements under their hands. Countless rapid sounds of metal and stone converged in midair, resounding through the clouds. For a moment, the ghosts were stunned and confused. They actually stopped fighting and stretched their necks in place, looking around blankly. When Li Wuxin saw this, he remembered that not only were the people of the Taxu Palace good at music, they also knew how to repair barriers. He was overjoyed. He raised his head and shouted, "Nephew Mei, do you know how to repair the heavenly rift?" Mei Hangxiu tried not care that being called his nephew Mei was disgusting. He only replied, "The heavenly rift is not something that can be repaired with my strength." "Ah, this." Li Wuxin's face paled. In the end, he flicked his sleeves and sighed, "Ai. Hangxiu, can you guard the four-corner barrier formation on Kaidi Town?" The one who spoke was Xue Zhenyang. Because Shi Shengpeak had always been on good terms with the Taxu Palace, Mei Hangxiu saw a familiar elder. He first hugged his pipa and bowed, then said, "I can try." "That's great. Xue Zhenyang clapped his hands and said, "You go guard the four-corner barrier formation. Don't let the living dead rush outside. Then call Yu Heng back. Elder Yu Heng. Ah, look at my memory. I forgot that you've never seen Yu Heng before. But it doesn't matter. You'll know when you get there. He's the one who's guarding the four-corner barrier formation." "All right." Mei Hangxiu was quite calm. He tilted his sword and flew towards the edge of Kaidi town like a meteor. Nangongxi knocked 3 arrows and shot them in 3 different directions. Amidst the buzzing of the bowstring, he saw Mei Hangxiu fluttering like a startled swan and the Taxiu Palace disciples using the sound of the guqin to confuse the enemy. He could not help but be startled. He said to Ye Wangzi, "This person's strength is so outstanding, how can you say that he is a good-for-nothing who relies on women to fight?" Ye Wangzi was also quite puzzled, but right now the ghosts were moving slowly, so it was a good opportunity to kill them. Therefore, he did not think too much about it. He only told Nangongxi, probably at that time he did not use his full strength. And then he focused on killing the enemy and did not say anything else. Among the 10 great sects, 4 of them had already arrived. They were no longer battered and exhausted when dealing with the heavenly rift, but the situation was still very strenuous. Although the living dead on the ground were frozen by the enchanted music of the Taxiu Palace disciples, there were even more ferocious howls gushing out from the opening of the ghost realm. The people of the Taxiu Palace were all standing in mid-air, and when they played the music, they could not divert their hands to protect themselves. Therefore, the evil spirits rushed towards the Pipa formation and the Guqin formation in all 4 directions of the clouds. The people of the Taxiu Palace had no choice but to divert some of them to play the music of the defensive formation. Therefore, the sound of the exorcism music of the enemy was weakened by a lot. The living dead on the ground immediately surged up like anxious ants. What was even more frightening was that as the whole of the ghost realm opened wider, some of the high-ranking evil spirits who were shackled actually broke free from their restraints because they had absorbed a large amount of yang energy from the human realm. They rushed into the mortal world with a loud bang. These evil spirits were different from before. Their corpses and resentful spirits merged into one. They were more ferocious and their spiritual power was stronger. Ordinary cultivators could not stop them at all. There were even some disciples who were flipped over by their palms alone. Their white bony claws suddenly pierced into the living person's chest and lungs. Blood splattered everywhere. The hearts of the cultivators that were full of spiritual power were eaten by these high-ranking evil spirits. The blood flowed down the evil spirits' rotten faces continuously. With the remnants of flesh and blood in their mouths, the evil spirits gained even more strength. They fiercely rushed into the crowd, like wild beasts looking for new prey to bite. In an instant, chaos erupted once again. Xue Zhenyang shouted, "Stay in formation and don't run around. Don't get singled out." However, there were still people who were panicking and crying as they fled in all directions. The smell of blood in the air was getting heavier and heavier. The evil spirits rushed over like a tide, together with the horde of the living dead. Nangongxi was drawing his bow and fighting vigorously. Suddenly, a hanged ghost stuck out its blood-red tongue and wrapped around his waist. Its sharp claws pierced toward his chest. Ye Wangzi was far away. When he turned around, his usually calm face instantly turned pale. "AC. Young master." At the critical moment, Song Kaiyutong held her sword and rushed over. She fiercely stabbed into the hanged ghost's arm. However, she had never killed a human before, let alone such a ferocious evil spirit. She was so shocked that she let go of her sword when she stabbed it. The long sword fell to the ground with a clang. The hanged ghost furiously swung an attack at her. Nangongxi put away his bow and changed to a sword. He blocked in front of her and shouted, "Stay away. Leave quickly." Song Kaiyutong's eyes were glistening with tears. She said, "Song Kaiyutong's life was saved by the Rufeng sect. How can I leave now?" Nangongsi was not good at dealing with women, but when he saw her delicate posture and firm gaze, his heart was moved. He could not help but curse inwardly, "Ye Wangzi! Ye Wangzi! Get your ass over here! Protect her well!" Ye Wangzi was bathed in blood. His handsome face was full of stains. He grabbed Song Kayutong's arm and sternly said, "Go find Shikshan Qin. Don't run around." "I won't go. I can still help." She begged, "Young master, I want to stay by your side." "Ye Wangzi, protect her." Ye Wangzi's expression instantly became very unsightly. He was such a gentleman, so it was rare for him to show such an angry expression. "Nangongsi." Every word between his teeth was trembling and broken. "I think you've lost your mind." After he finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to the two of them. Holding his sword, he swept away and hid in the rolling tide of corpses. More and more high-level evil spirits appeared. They blended into the crowd like a sharp knife cutting through the belly of a fish, peeling off its scales. The sticky and shiny scales were dyed with dark red strands of blood, floating up and down. Everyone was unable to fend for themselves. The evil spirits surrounded the living people, wanting to tear them apart and swallow them into their stomachs, dragging them into the endless hell. Mo Ran, Xuemeng, and Shi Mei had their backs against each other, blocking the evil spirits from all sides. However, the circle was getting narrower and narrower. With a swoosh, Xuemeng chopped off the arm of an evil spirit, blood splurging out of it. The evil spirits attacking saw that this person was strong, so they circled around him and pounced on Shi Mei. Shi Mei formed a seal with both hands, but because his strength was gradually weakening, the water light formation dimmed and brightened every now and then. Seeing that the fight has become difficult, Mo Ran steeled his heart and said, "Shi Mei, open a defensive formation barrier." "Xuemeng, hide inside." "What?" Xuemeng was furious when he heard this. "You want me to be shielded like a coward? Listen to me and hide inside. What kind of situation is this, and you still want to compete? How can we kill these many evil spirits?" Shi Mei said, "Mo Ran, what are you going to do? Don't ask too many questions. Just do as I say." Mo Ran softened his tone. "It's all right." The encirclement gradually narrowed. Mo Ran urged, "Hurry up, before it's too late." Shi Mei had no choice but to change the spell talisman and raise a blue defensive light formation, enveloping himself and Xuemeng. When Mo Ran saw that he had formed the barrier, he suddenly pulled his holy weapon out. He then cut his palm and sprinkled blood on it, leaving his own spiritual power behind. Then, his eyes burned and he shouted, "Why aren't you working?" When Jiangui heard him, the vine's flames grew brighter. Every willow leaf was wrapped in blood-red spiritual power, like a sharp knife that fell on the vine. The whole willow vine suddenly grew 10 feet long. Mo Ran closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw the appearance of Chu Wanning using his killing move several times. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes reflected the sinister faces of countless evil spirits. He held the evil spirits and struck them in the air. Sparks exploded and splashed everywhere. Mo Ran raised his hand, and his clothes fluttered. At that moment, his figure seemed to overlap with Chu Wanning's figure in his mind. The two people's movements were almost identical. Wind. Destroy evil. Clouds seemed to be pulled down as if the sky fell below. The two people behind Mo Ran only saw a huge scarlet light formation like a red lotus from hell blooming. A strong wind passed through the ground like thousands of invisible blades. Jiangui in Mo Ran's hands danced around creating shadows. Wherever they passed, sand and gravel flew. Countless evil spirits were swept up by this shocking whirlpool and were instantly crushed into minced meat. It's Tianwen's wind of Chu Wanning. Mo Ran had actually learned 90% of it. When the fierce wind had stopped, a vast surrounding area were cleaned off of corpses and evil spirit. Not even a single piece of armor was left. Looking back, Xuemeng and Shimei's faces were full of astonishment. Mo Ran did not have time to be happy though. He only felt that what he had learned up to this day is far from enough. If he could immediately return to his past cultivation, this small fissure between the mortal realm and the ghost realm would not be so difficult to fix. Look over there. Suddenly, someone shouted from afar. Everyone looked up at the same time. They saw several sword formations in different attire and of different spiritual power coming from several directions in the sky. The heavenly rift had finally alarmed all the sects in the upper cultivation world. As the light swords fell to the ground, it can be seen that the people of Linling Island were beautiful and elegant, while the masters of Wuobei Temple were solemn and dignified. Seeing all the great sects together were overwhelming. The rest of the 10 great sects had finally arrived. More powerful evil spirits were still coming out, like endless locusts. However, with the sudden increase of cultivators, the situation gradually became less dire. At the same time, the transition of Mei Hangxiu and Chu Wanning's spiritual power was finally completed. The four-corner barrier formation in the 4 directions of north, south, east and west changed from gold to blue. The four-corner barrier formation was now being guarded by Mei Hangxiu. Chu Wanning flew with the wind and swept to the center of the fierce battle. He looked up at the crack in the sky that had been completely opened. There was some kind of huge and terrifying evil force behind it. Chu Wanning could almost feel the madness of that power, as if it had drunk thousands of blood and qi of hundreds of millions of creatures. If the barrier was not sealed, he was afraid that an even more powerful kind of evil spirit suppressed in the ghost realm would break free from its restraint and come to the mortal realm. Chu Wanning could not help but think that the person behind all these might have wanted to release some major evil spirit from the ghost realm into the mortal realm. But what exactly did he want? Shizun. Shimei anxiously called him. Chu Wanning heard the voice and turned his face towards it. Mo Ran felt the scene from his previous life overlapped again at this moment. Shizun. At that time, Shimei also called Chu Wanning just like this. Chu Wanning heard the voice and turned his face. Shimei gasped for breath in the snow. His body was covered in blood, but his eyes were firm. Shizun is going to repair the barrier. Yes. But this is not an ordinary fissure. This is the heavenly rift. Shizun, how can you do it alone? I'm here to lend Shizun a hand. I've learned the defensive barrier technique in the Peach Blossoms Spring, so I won't hold Shizun back. The conversation between the two of them years ago that ended in death seemed to echo in Mo Ran's ears. Mo Ran was frightened and his scalp was going numb. He suddenly pulled Shimei behind him and threw him to Xuemeng. He said loudly, Xueziming, look after him. Look after him. Xuemeng opened his eyes wide. Dog, where are you going? The wind blew, and the smell of blood filled the air. There was no snow in the sky. This was different from his previous life. Mo Ran's eyes fell on Shimei, who was at a loss. He felt sad and relieved. It was impossible for Chu Wanning to fix this barrier on his own. But other than his disciples, no one knew Chu Wanning's spiritual energy cultivation method and could cooperate with him perfectly. Therefore, one of them had to go through this tribulation. The north wind is blowing angrily and killing intent can be felt for thousands of miles. Mo Ran suddenly made up his mind and hugged Shimei. For the first time, he directly held him in his arms. He paused for a moment and then suddenly pushed him away. Shimei. The person who will die this time would probably be me. I'm going to help Shizun seal the barrier. Mo Ran said firmly. His tone was resolute. He narrowed his eyes and looked deeply at Shimei. Suddenly, he no longer cared what other people thought of him. He didn't care that Xuemeng was right next to him. He didn't care that he would be rejected. He waited for 2 lifetimes, loved him 2 lifetimes. Now he was going to leave and maybe he wouldn't be able to come back. He stood amidst the fierce wind, wanting to say a few words to his beloved one. She may, actually I. But when he was about to open his mouth, the howls of evil spirits and evil beasts drowned out his voice. The urge to roll over and over like molten lava gradually cooled down and finally ceased. Aran, what do you want to say? Moran suddenly saw vision from his previous life. Under the warm curtains, he saw Shimay's gentle and smiling face. How cruel! He remembered it all his life, from birth to death, from heaven to hell. Moran's eyes were slightly red, but he smiled. Nothing. Good things should only be said once. Shimei, you. I'm going to help Shizun. When I come back, if I still want to tell you. His dimples were deep, and his eyes were full of affection. I'll tell you again. After saying this, he turned around and rushed toward Chu Wanning. Shimei wouldn't die. At least, he wouldn't die in front of him. Moran suddenly felt light. The figure in white fluttering in front of him was probably the end of his rebirth in this life. His Shizun had always been magnanimous. When Shimei died, Chu Wanning chose to leave him in order to close the gap in the barrier and purge those demons and monsters that had ran amok. This time, he was the one who had to build the barrier with Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning, whom he despised and hated so much as he chose to uphold his reputation as the Baidu immortal instead of helping a dying insignificant person. Shizun. He stood in front of him. Jiangui appeared in his hand. This barrier is difficult to fix. Let me help you. The situation was dangerous. Chu Wanning glanced at him and didn't say anything, which meant it was a tacit agreement. He leaped into the sky and stood at the corner of the eaves of the Chen mansion. Moran followed him and leaped up. Chu Wanning said, "Set up the dragon pillar formation and observe." Moran followed his instructions and raised his hand at the same time. The two of them stood on the left and right, pointing their fingers to create a seal. They then slowly raised their hands. Open the formation. Along with this shout, the two people's spiritual power suddenly surged out from their bodies. They each stood at the foot of the formation and joined hands to start repairing the rift, using their surging cultivation to condense into a constantly expanding golden red barrier. When the barrier came into contact with the evil spirits that had just surged out, the evil spirits seemed to have been burned by a raging fire. They screamed and retreated into the opening of the ghost realm. The barrier became clearer and clearer, and the light formation became more and more dazzling. Two coiling dragon platforms condensed from spiritual energy rose under Chu Wanning and Moran's feet, dragging the two of them to the highest point in the sky. The open crack up the sky slowly closed under the pressure of the golden red light formation, but it seemed to be unwilling to comply, and the resentment inside became more intense. Every inch they closed, the evil spirits surging out of them became stronger and more powerful. When the two of them were only a few miles away from the barrier's crack, the evil spirits inside were almost to the point of materialization. Moran's body, after he was reborn, gradually felt as if there was million pounds of weight on his shoulders, and as if there was a huge rock pressing down on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. On the other side, Chu Wanning's spiritual power was steady and strong, continuously flowing out. They closed the rift little by little, inch by inch. The malevolent miasma between heaven and earth condensed, turning into sharp blades, cutting every inch of Moran's skin, flesh, bones, and drawing blood. Shizun. As his consciousness gradually blurred, he seemed to see the scene of the past. Shimei and Chu Wanning worked together to repair the barrier, and the gate of the ghost realm and mortal realm closed in only a moment. Those evil spirits who were unable to return to the mortal world saw that Shimei's power was weak, so they all gathered in one place and attacked Shimei. Bang! In just a moment, Shimei, who was doing his best to maintain the balance of the barrier, was pierced through. This seems like a reenactment of that scene. Almost nothing had changed. Only this time, the person who was struck by the 10,000 evil spirits was Moran. At the heavenly rift, the evil spirits pierced through the clouds, and in an instant, pierced through Moran's chest. Moran only saw a smear of blood in front of his eyes, and when he came back to his senses, he realized that it was the hot blood gushing out of his own chest. In this stifling airflow, he turned his face with difficulty, only to see that Chu Wanning's clothes were as white as snow, his expression solemn and cold. He didn't even spare him half a glance. His chest suddenly surged with countless grievances. In the end, the hatred was deep. He fell from the coiled dragon high platform, blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth and his chest was burning red. The fall was actually very fast, but it felt so long, like a drowning person gradually sinking to the bottom of the sea, no longer able to hear the whispers of the mortal world. Chu Wanning did not raise his hand to reach for him, did not stop his fall. He didn't even spare a moment to look at him. When he fell, the red spiritual power suddenly disappeared. Chu Wanning, just like in his previous life, chose to use all of his spiritual powers and single-handedly closed the barrier that Moran had not yet completed. After some time the heavenly rift was sealed. The evil spirits that were left in the mortal realm had lost the nourishment of the yin energy from the ghost realm. They instinctively felt anxious and became more and more violent. They became angry and fight more ferociously with the cultivators. In just the blink of an eye, the formations of many sects were defeated. Chu Wanning fell from the sky. When Moran fell, the coiled dragon pillar below formed a layer of light to protect him, so when he fell to the ground, he did not break into pieces. However, his entire chest was pierced by evil spirits and blood flowed all over the ground. This situation was no different from Shi Mei in the past. Chu Wanning pushed back the evil spirits that were rushing towards Moran, and created a barrier to protect Moran. Shizun. The person behind him seemed to murmur softly. "Are you leaving?" Moran coughed up blood, but there was a smile on his face. "Are you leaving again?" Outside the flowing golden barrier, that person's figure was still standing with his back to him. Moran opened his mouth, but a mouthful of blood suddenly surged up in his throat. "Chu Wanning, are you made of wood? You won't be sad, you have no selfishness, right? Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning." He felt that his vision was getting blurrier and blurrier. He was already full of injuries from the earlier fierce battle. There seemed to be a cut on his forehead from where blood flowed down to his eyes. As he looked up to the sky and laughed wantonly, almost crazily, tears of blood rolled down his face. He choked up and said, "Chu Wanning, turn around. Look at me. Are you still leaving? Look at me one more time. I'm going to die." Back then, you at least looked at Shi Mei one last time. You. Is it true that you don't like me at all? You don't like me at all? Otherwise, why didn't you look at me one last time? Why didn't you turn back? Shizun. Tears of blood filled his eyes. His last impression was of the white-robed man walking away alone outside the golden barrier. He went to suppress evil. It seems in his heart, anyone in the world was more important than Mo Weiyu. End chapter.